right, Stacy. Hey there.
Hey.
Hey, welcome to A Dash of Salt, where two salty women sprinkle a little flavor into your everyday journey through work, growth, and everything in between. I am Sharon Mawet, your co-host, a native Texan with a knack for baking up big dreams.
You are. I am Stacy McCracken, and I am her salty companion. I am a small town girl. I grew up in the Midwest in a town called Peru, Indiana, and I live in Austin, Texas now.
That's right. And so together we're going to infuse a little saltiness into your world. And whether it's adding spice to your career or seasoning to your personal growth, we have got you covered. So sit back, relax, and get ready for a flavorful ride.
And if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. We are so glad that you found us and are testing us out on your podcast playlist. I hope you'll stick around. And if you're back for more, we can't wait to share this episode with you.
That's right. So Stacy, as we kick off, what spark of inspiration do you have for us today?
So I thought we'd start with a quote, and I just want to talk about this quote just a little bit. I love quotes, and so I have them everywhere.
Yes.
I have them everywhere.
That's right.
And so this is a one that is from Albert Einstein.
Okay.
And the quote is, "A person who has never made a mistake never tried anything new."
There you go. Yeah, we all can make mistakes every day.
Right. And I thought, because I know that we're talking a little bit about baking today, and
right.
I
just made a mistake this week. I forgot to, oh my gosh, put the vanilla in the scones I made this week. But you know what? I had it all mixed up. I just sprinkled the vanilla on top. So it was all good.
It turned out fine, right? Okay. I think that so often, and maybe it's because of school, right? That you get that paper back and it has a red mark on it, or right, we're just so focused on mistakes. And I will talk a little bit later, right? I'm in school and I'm working on my doctorate. And one of the topics in my doctorate is growth mindset.
Okay.
And growth mindset is all about learning from mistakes.
Okay.
Thinking, okay, well, I just didn't get that yet.
That's right.
Right. And so baking, right? Well, that cake didn't turn out quite right yet. That's my weekly spark for us.
Thanks so much. And as you mentioned, today's topic is my favorite hobby, which is baking. So baking not only, of course, allows me to be creative, try new foods, try new techniques, but more importantly, baking for me is a stress reliever. So Stacy, do you have a favorite hobby, or should I say stress reliever?
For stress relief, when I am really stressed, I need to get creative. I find that like some creative outlet helps me when I get stressed. So I tend to paint, but not pictures.
No, not paint by numbers.
No, I paint like the bathroom. But there's something super calming to me about like just that creative outlet.
All right. Well, I know who to call when I'm ready to branch out beyond my gray walls in my new house.
So right. But to be fair, so other hobbies besides that when I'm stressed. So I do Duolingo.
All right.
And I love to travel. And so I love just like stretching my brain to try to learn something different. And Duolingo is fun. So it's like a game, but it's actually purposeful.
There you go.
So that's one of my other ones. And I will tell you that I tried country winemaking. You and I love tasting wine together, right? We have been to some really fun places to try sparkling wines and other kinds of wines. And so I love wine. And so I thought, I'll try country winemaking. So country winemaking is making wine from fruit. So typically not grapes, but other kinds of fruit. So blueberries or pineapple or peaches or whatever. So, and it doesn't require a lot of contraptions to do it. And I thought, score, like it's something I can do at home. People make beer at home. I should be able to do country wine. Well, it was an epic fail.
Oh no.
My first batch of country wine turned out a little bit more like country moonshine. So it was like things you might use as a mixer in,
Okay.
you know,
another drink. Yeah.
But also I discovered I don't have the patience, right? I can paint a bathroom and it's done.
Yeah.
I can do my Duolingo lesson and I'm done in 10 minutes.
Right.
You have to like mix up country wine and wait.
Yeah.
Like
it's like making homemade vanilla. Yeah.
Months. I'm not patient enough for that.
All right. Well, we are going to talk about how to find your passions or your hobby or your activities. So, you know, baking cookies is one of my earliest memories. I remember being so happy making a double batch of chocolate chip cookies on a, you know, Saturday afternoon. But then being so frustrated that all the cookies were gone the very next day, thanks to all of my 3 older brothers. But
so did you use the recipe on the back of the Nestle package to
probably
do your,
back then, yes.
in those days,
Now
right?
I probably have a dozen different chocolate chip cookie recipes that
Sharon makes amazing chocolate chip cookies.
So,
amazing.
Anyway. But I realized in the last couple of years, now that I'm an empty nester, that, you know, I really forgotten a lot of my hobbies. Like when I was young, I used to do cross stitch. I used to put together puzzles all the time. And now, you know, I'm just, you know, in today's technology resorting, if I'm not baking, I'm just scrolling on my phone. So I figured I really cannot do this for the next 20 years of my life. So I need to branch out and do other things. Because, you know, as a mom, I scrapbook all of my kids, you know, memories and trips we went on and whatnot. I made it a specific point to rediscover, as you have, what my hobbies are outside of just baking. So the first tip we're going to talk about today is, you know, how do you get started with baking or any new hobby, as we'll maybe talk about your winemaking. Well, the first tip I realize is you have to remember to start small, which is not really like us. We like to jump in head first. But, you know, if you're a baker, I encourage you to start with a simple recipe, something small, quick that you can do, like a loaf, right? Or a muffin that you can whip together pretty quick and do that.
Would you suggest starting, like, if you're not a baker at all, you know, should you start with, can you even just mix up a box mix? Or are you talking about find a recipe online, get the flours and give it a shot?
Well, yes, you caught me there, Stacy. I would start with the buying the flours, but I do, you know, if you are very brand new to baking, then of course mixes are a great way to, you know, whip something up and try it. But, you know, I encourage you to, you know, branch out a little bit more, go to that next step and, you know, find that recipe from baking from scratch. So
I tried bread. So I did. I actually tried, I'd never made bread before.
Okay.
And so, and I've read, right, that it's healthier for you. Right. And so I'm trying to eat healthier. And so I don't eat bread very often because I don't love bread, but I love fresh bread. Like when I travel, right, it's so good. And I thought, I'm going to try to make bread. And so I made focaccia bread, which is actually not real hard.
No, it's very easy.
Yeah. And so that was like a really good one to start out with.
It is. Yeah. So I encourage you to find, you know, today's social media, you can find somebody in your hobby, whether it's a photographer, a baker. I recommend one of my favorite bakers online is Courtney Rich. Her Instagram handle is Cake by Courtney. But what she does is she has a lot of tutorials online. So she starts you out very, very simply and then grows from there and gets to be more technical episodes as well. So in fact, she has one of my favorites, since I love chocolate chip cookies, she has one of my favorite cookie recipes. She did a spin-off, the famous Levian cookies out of New York, that the ginormous cookies that you can bake, but it's a chocolate peanut butter chip cookie. Her recipe is perfection. So I will link that in our website. But another way to get started is, of course, attending a class nearby. We talked about virtual networking. One favorite baking class I found lately is Bake from Scratch, which is a magazine, but they also connect with Williams-Sonoma, and they have a weekly baking school every Monday night where they'll go through a different a different technique or a different baked good item. Each class is $20, so it's not too much, but benefit of going to that class is they have an online community which you can join and continue the conversation beyond class. Have you found well, you talked about Duolingo. What kind of classes have you found?
I have done Duolingo, but then, I guess to be fair, my hobby right now is, so my hobby is always learning. Like you heard as I described Duolingo, right? It's about, I'm doing this. I love to read. I read a lot of fiction. I read nonfiction, but that's how I go to sleep at night, right? Is reading just enjoyable books. So historical fiction and stuff like that. But I'm actually in school. So, I'm working on my doctorate. So during the pandemic, I felt like I wasn't growing. I wasn't learning a lot in my role. My role seemed kind of like not stretching me enough anymore. And so I thought, I'd always wanted to earn my doctorate. And so I have been looking and looking for programs, and my husband finally said, honey, either do it or stop talking about it. Like, just like, let's do something. And so I found a program, and it was a doctorate of technology, and I could customize it to focus on leadership and innovation and the use of technology. And so I started that, and I am this close,
almost there. I'm sure we're going to talk about that in a future episode.
We will. But for me, it's all about learning, right? And so, I watch webinars that are free. I do a ton of free, like learning does not have to cost you money, and hobbies don't have to, so I may watch a webinar and learn something, and then I'll sit down and just try to figure it out, right? And so that's how I paint. That's how I do all kinds of things.
Well, that's what, as we're starting new hobbies, we talked about starting small. So as you said, you can find a lot of free resources, but I encourage you, don't run out and buy every new tool. You need to go start this new hobby, which I know for me is hard to do. But for example, I saw everybody on social media doing the new trend of paint by diamonds. It looked super relaxing and super enjoyable to have this great, pretty picture. And if you don't know what paint by diamonds, it's little beads you put in, kind of like paint by numbers, and you put it in and you create a pretty mosaic, if you will. But I said, we're going to start small. And so I found a small little kit at Michael's. And then, of course, I bought it when it was on sale at Michael's. Thanks, Michael's, along with a coupon. And so it really didn't cost me much at all. So there's lots of, as you said, free resources out there.
Yeah,
of course. Like you, I decided paint by diamonds is not.
I was just going to ask, how did it go?
Yeah, it's too tedious, I felt. Though maybe I didn't, in retrospect, I probably didn't give it a full good faith effort. I should have picked, instead of focusing on not spending too much and starting small, I probably should have spent a little bit more and bought a pattern maybe that was more inspirational to me than just a kit to try it out. So,
and were you in the right frame of mind when you did it? And so
I did. I spread it out a couple of times and did, because it was like 4 little coasters. So I spread it out, and
no, not for you. So I do. I mean, I have to confess, I have some equipment I had to buy to try the country winemaking. And so now I'm going to have to figure out a new purpose for it.
Because like marketplace, maybe.
Yeah, because I needed, some specific jars with certain kinds of lids and things like that. So Facebook Marketplace, or they'll get repurposed in some way.
So, but since we're talking about baking, I do encourage you, you can start off small. Muffins, you just need a bowl, a whisk, and a pan to put it in. So, of course, my favorite tool includes that Pampered Chef spring portion scoop thing. You know what I'm talking about? Like an ice cream scooper with the spring lid on it. It makes perfectly sized cookie balls, or you can repurpose it for making meatballs, or portioning out.
So like a scoop that had, but
spring loaded scoop.
It's a spring loaded scoop.
Yeah. Okay. Great thing. So you can start small, and then, as you said, see if you can use that tool for something else.
So like meatballs. If you don't use it for cookies, you can use it for something else.
Yeah,
love it.
Excellent. Yes, and then of course we encourage you to start a hobby because as we talk a lot about mental health and benefits of it, I talked about baking for me is a big stress reliever, but hobbies increase your creativity, they stretch your mind, and you can build relationship through your hobby. So, I try to do that. As I mentioned, when I get stressed, I bake, but I also, moving to a new street, we have new neighbors move in, so I like to bake them a loaf of bread or a baked good and go over there and welcome them to the neighborhood, celebrating milestones, I bake. So whatever it might be, a promotion, it's all sweeter with baked goods. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. I love it.
But part of that hobby is the process. Like you get into habits. You talk about Duolingo. I love the process of looking through my cookbooks, finding a recipe, making it seasonal. What products are in the grocery store right now? What baked good can I make from that? Yeah. So do you think I have anyone wanting to start baking yet?
I don't know. I don't know. They may be thinking it sounds like too much work, but
Yeah.
but it's not. So, and I actually told you just this morning, right? Because I don't always have time to bake from scratch. Like Sharon is an amazing bake from scratch baker.
Yeah.
But I don't always have time to bake from scratch, right? And
Yeah.
so recently I was like, okay, I wanted something sweet. I didn't have time to bake from scratch. I looked in the cupboard and I had a mix that was like blueberry coffee cake. And I thought, what can I do with this? And so I actually, because we did mention that I'm trying to eat healthier, right? And blueberry coffee cake does not sound wildly healthy.
Yeah.
But I added flaxseed to it, like no recipe, but I was like, this is probably going to work. I added some flax to it. I added a whole bunch more blueberries, like from the freezer to it, and just did a little experiment.
Yes.
And I thought it'll either work or it won't.
Right.
Right. We talked about mistakes when we kicked off. Right. And I thought, oh, it'll either work or it won't. I added some cinnamon in there, so things I like. Yep. And it actually turned out great. And so I hope that if you aren't convinced to bake from scratch, right, that maybe just adopting that mindset of what can I do to like doctor this up, like start experimenting a little bit.
Well, we have to remember with any hobby, the whole point of starting this hobby is to improve your mental health. So it's supposed to be fun. So if you go in there thinking it's going to be, I have to make a perfect loaf of bread, then it becomes more stressful than relaxing. So it's all about getting in there, trying it out, painting. I'm sure former President Bush's first, piece of art was not amazing, but through time, through practice, it's gotten pretty good. So yeah. So, talking about making mistakes, one of my favorite memories of baking is one of my kids did a book report on Coco Chanel. So for her birthday, I'm like, well, I can make, you see on Pinterest, I can make a Coco Chanel bag, purse, cake, right? And I thought for sure. Now the end result looked more like a lunchbox than it did at first. But it was the journey and everyone was super excited and everybody loved it. And it was the journey that mattered at the end. And we had a lot of fun at the date. So yeah.
That sounds awesome.
All right.
That sounds awesome.
So once you've mastered a basics of a new hobby, then, as you and I both have done, we try to think, how can I take a current hobby or passion that I love and take it to the next level, right? You're trying to earn a PhD. And so I tried to add some mastery skills to my baking level. So one of the favorite things I did is I went to the Culinary Institute of America, and they have classes for baking enthusiasts, as they like to call them. It's 5 days. It was super fun. And this is where not only are you mastering a skill, but it's introducing you to a new community. I had a great time. I don't know that I learned a lot of new techniques from this boot camp, but I got to do things that I don't normally do, like make a lemon meringue pie, and I got to use a giant blowtorch to torch the top of the meringue. And I'm like, I don't have this tool at home, but that was sure fun. Or, every night we got together with dinner with the other classmates, and, we had great conversations talking about baking and food. And I met a lot of people around the world. So, tell us more about your PhD or another activity you've done that's broadened your horizons.
I think, honestly, if I had lots of money, I would just travel more. Like to me, travel is a hobby.
Yeah.
And I also scuba dive.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I love the ocean. I love the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And so scuba diving is also an expensive hobby. Anybody who's a scuba diver knows that's true. But, I think that my brother was a scuba diver as well. And his mastery of that was to go become then a dive master, right? And teach other people to scuba dive. But for me, part of the reason I'm earning my doctorate is I love teaching.
Yeah.
And so I love creating new courses and I love teaching and helping people up their skills. And so I love creating my own teaching. I love teaching working professionals. So as an adjunct professor, I love doing that. Partially because it is networking. I can, build relationships, but I'm also helping them. So that's another way I've kind of taken my hobby of learning to the next level, which is, to design courses around topics that I'm interested in learning about. And I'm hoping other people are interested in learning about too.
Yeah.
And then finally, the other thing that, I've done is it just left my brain. It was right there. What was it?
Well, we'll come back.
We're gonna have to come back to it because it was so good.
Yeah. Well,
it was so good.
We have some more time. So, but Stacy brings out a good point. Find a friend you can do your hobby with. I mentioned playing pickleball and meeting new friends, and a friend introduced me to another group. But if you're baking or making wine, pull a friend along with you to try it out. Swap recipes. So we've been talking about sharing recipes. And so go online and find a community and share trends. There's Facebook groups, like I mentioned, Bake from Scratch has their own Facebook group where they
I remembered what it was.
There you go.
So reading, I talked about reading,
yeah.
Right? And so I'm actually going to write a book.
Oh, wow.
That's the end goal, right? Is that I want to write, and I have a couple of different kinds of books in mind, but I want to take the work from my doctorate and write a book about that. But I also want to write some kind of fun fiction books. And so I can't get there overnight. Yeah. So I write articles now, right? So you just ask about how you take it to the next level.
Right.
Right. And so I'm writing articles and then actually doing this podcast. Right.
Exactly.
This is another way of taking those things to the next level. Yeah. And so, but there will be a book in my future.
So find those communities, a community, if I've inspired you to take up baking yet, another community I found online was Cherry Bomb. So they're a media company really celebrating women in the food industry. And so it's really a community. So they started a magazine, they have a podcast going on. But what I love even more is that they have community dinners. So they have various networking events throughout the US to bring people together around this community of food and drink. And so they've designed it in a way that you don't have to bring a BFF, but you just can come by yourself and really engage with other people about a topic that you love. So yeah, definitely, take our communities and support our hobbies and make those connections. So
I love that.
As we, hopefully you won't wait till tomorrow to start baking or find, a new hobby to pursue. So, today's quick bites from a baking hobbyist include start small and grow your skills over time and repetition. Find a community and enjoy those hobbies with other people on a regular basis. And then finally, as you said, it's okay to make mistakes. Remember, it's the journey that counts. Trial and error is part of that process. So hopefully, now Stacy, what tip do you have us cooking in the kitchen, or should I say baking in the kitchen?
Right. Today we are baking in the kitchen. And so, today I've been thinking about this a lot because I know how much you love baking, and and I have lots of other things that I like to do, but I imagine you may be thinking, I don't have time for any of this, right? If I only had time, right? I am so busy. I'm so busy at work or with the kids or with life or whatever, right? There is no time. Well, so here's a challenge for you, which is that there is research that suggests that when you give your brain a break, if you are working on like a really tough problem to solve and you've just been poring over it, or you've been stuck at your computer, for hours working on a project, if you give your brain a break, even just a little bit of a break, then it actually allows your brain to work while you're distracted. And so it allows your brain to clean things up, to make new connections. And honestly, that brief break of doing this other activity, so whipping up some muffins, whipping up some cookies, right? Is honestly supporting you in solving those problems that you were trying to solve, and really, and it makes all of the difference in the world. And so I would encourage you, if you're thinking, I don't have time for that, actually you need to make time for it,
to make the time,
because it makes you more effective and more efficient.
I love that tip. Yeah, thanks. So thanks for joining us on today's episode of A Dash of Salt. I'm Sharon Mawet, along with my co-host Stacy McCracken. Remember to keep seasoning your journey with purpose, passion, and a pinch of playfulness. Yeah.
Awesome. And make sure you add us to your playlist, right? And keep tuning back in. Check us out at twosaltywomen.com for more content, and come back next time for another episode.
Right. Remember, life is always better with a dash of salt.